I love .hack. Yeah, I know, it's shocking, isn't it? But I also love Dungeons and Dragons. Today I'm going to go to the roots of the channel and do a little bit of Dungeons and Dragons content with my current content, .hack. Today I'm going to go back to the roots of the channel and delve back into the world of Dungeons and Dragons, more specifically Baldur's Gate 3. We'll be making characters from .hack and seeing how well they would do in the .hack universe through the Trials of Tav. Oh, and did I forget to mention, we're going to be playing on Honor Mode, the hardest difficulty BG3 has in store. The Trials of Tav mod for Baldur's Gate 3 randomizes everything, randomizes enemies, randomizes locations, randomizes pretty much everything in a roguelike style. We'll be tracking 3 key metrics to track their success. What level were they when their journey ended? How many enemies did they defeat? And most importantly, how well did they fare against the ever-changing foes of the Trials of Tav? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell icon for more videos like this, and let me know what you think is going to happen in this video in the comments down below. Before we begin, I want to establish a few rules for this challenge. Rule number 1. If it's aesthetically pleasing, I'll choose that over an item that gives a gameplay advantage. The reason why I'm doing this is because I want them to look like they're from the .hack universe. Rule number 2. We're going to make sure that they use only what they could equip in their game. For example, if they are proficient in just staves and only wear robes, that's the only kind of armor and weapon that we can equip. This does not apply to things like gloves, boots, accessories, that sort of thing. Rule number 3, we cannot have another party member on the team. This is judging based off their own experience and what they can accomplish by themselves. Other than that, everything is fair game. Let's get on with today's challenge. For today's video, we're going to be making Atoli, the Harvest Cleric. As a Harvest Cleric, she's not going to have a whole lot of attacking abilities, it's mostly supports and healing, so that's what we're going to be focusing on for this character build. For our 3 starting cantrips, we're going to choose the Light spell, so that way we can see things a little bit better in dark areas. Sacred Flame is going to be our only attacking spell. And Resistance is going to allow us to make our saving throws a little bit better. For her subclass, we're going to go ahead and choose the Light domain. This will allow us to have our healing be a little bit more potent. There isn't going to be a time where we have to make any skill checks via charisma or whatnot. The only 2 relevant ones are athletics and acrobatics, so I just kind of chose the acolyte background because I thought that was the most appropriate. And now for her stats. Now this is what we got going on here. I made her strength and dexterity at 8 because she's not going to be doing any melee or ranged attacks outside of her own spell casting. And while strength we could get away with not using, dexterity is really going to hurt us in the long run, especially with our AC being lower than normal. I went ahead and made her constitution of 14 so that way she'll have a little bit more health, as well as being able to pass her saves when concentrating on spells. Her intelligence is a 12, it's not going to be used in this run, but it's nice to have, just in case. Wisdom is going to be her main stat. This is just going to allow her to be able to hit enemies with her Sacred Flame a little bit better, have more spells available to her. This is what we're going to be focused on throughout this entire run. She also has a 15 in charisma because boy does she know how to talk, and she is a very friendly person. People like her. Before we could get into the combat though, I did a couple of things. I made it so that way we could get double rogue points, which will allow us to get harder fights as we go along, some extra currency to spend, as well as 10 free loot boxes essentially to get some items. I did manage to get a few good things in this item drop. The first being the Emerald Ring, which will allow us to go ahead and increase our movement speed by 10 feet. That's really going to help when trying to escape from enemies. We also found a really nice Ring of Regeneration, and this is going to be the most important item that we would have throughout this entire run. What this does, it would heal at least 1 to 4 HP at the start of every turn. We got a Robe of Supreme Defenses, which not only does give us a little bit more AC to work with, but it looks very similar to Atoli's outfit, which honestly I'm surprised we even got this in the first place. It's just made for her. This pairs well with the Boots of Striding, where if we are concentrated on a spell, not only is she gaining 1 AC from her robe, but she's also gaining immunity to being prone, as well as extra movement speed for when we do so. One of the most important things we've got from this is the Elixir of Barkskin. This will make her normally 10 AC while concentrating, but with the Elixir it will set her AC to a 16 instead for the rest of the day. Alright, let's get into the first round of combat. The first enemy we are up against is a Badger, which doesn't seem like it will be too difficult of an enemy, but it has extra attack, which means he can make 2 attacks on his turn instead of 1. And while we can outpace him, there is an issue that you're already seeing. As we're using Sacred Flame, they need to make a Wisdom saving throw, and if they pass, they take no damage. If they succeed, they take between 1 and 8 damage. And that is not a whole lot of damage, especially since we are getting around like 50-60% chance of actually succeeding in that damage. So while this hit and run tactic is working, it is taking up a lot of time, and I'm seeing that this is probably going to be the case for the rest of this run. I went back to camp and decided to use my currency to try to get a few more items. We ended up getting the Pale Oak Staff, which once per day we can entangle our foes in vines. The next item we got actually pairs well with the Ring of Regeneration we got. The secondary effect isn't going to be relevant because it's just us, but the first effect is fantastic. If we heal anybody, that includes ourselves, that person gets Blade Ward, which essentially reduces physical damage by half. And considering we have the Ring of Regeneration, we are always going to be taking half damage from physical attacks. That is absolutely fantastic, and it's definitely going to boost our longevity within these rounds of combat. The next rounds of combat are going to start with us fighting a Face Spider. Not only can they teleport to any location that they see within 30 feet, but they also can do poison damage whenever they decide to attack us. 2 castings of Sacred Flame was enough to get rid of him, since it only had 7 HP. That last round wasn't really that bad, just the Face Spider. I hope the rest of the rounds are just as easy. We managed to get level 2 at this point, and with a new ability, Preserve Life, we were able to have an extra healing option for when we need it. I also took this time to re-prepare some of the spells that I had. Shield of Faith is a concentration spell that gives us +2 to AC. Sanctuary makes it so that way we cannot be targeted for attacks, however, if we attack, that effect is gone. Protection from Good and Evil makes it so that way elementals, fae, fiends, undead, and apparitions have disadvantage on attack rolls against us. We cannot be charmed, frightened, or possessed by them either. Guiding Bolt is another damaging spell that deals radiant damage, and if it hits an enemy, our next attack against it will have advantage. And the last spell I chose was Create Water because I don't really remember, I just chose it because I needed a filler spell. I then took another look at what I had and decided to put on an amulet that will allow us to ignore opportunity attacks if our HP is under 50%. The next round of combat consists of a Bugbear, another Face Spider, and a Cobalt. The Face Spider is nothing too much to worry about as it can be taken out easily. The Cobalt and Bugbear, however, are pretty tough enemies. Not only do they have a lot of HP, but they also have high enough resistances to our spell, so hitting with Sacred Flame is going to take a long time. In fact, in the footage that you're seeing here, the Sacred Flame doesn't really hit a whole lot. Like, at the very least, it hits like maybe once every few attempts or so, and that's just being generous. With Sacred Flame being the only reliable damage that we have, it's going to take a long while before we do any sort of damage to these guys. I did manage to take out the Face Spider though. I was getting a little impatient, so I thought about using Guiding Bolt against the Kobold, and it did do about 14 damage to him, so it wasn't all for nothing. The only thing that's really keeping me alive in this battle is the Regeneration Ring and the gloves that we got earlier, which will allow us to take half damage from physical attacks while also regaining HP. Honestly, if it weren't for those two, this run would have ended right here. After playing follow the leader with these enemies, I do eventually defeat them. With that long battle done, I managed to get another level up, taking us to level 3. We now have access to level 2 spells. For our new spell that we can get, I decided to add Spiritual Weapon. Not only would this do a lot of force damage, but it will make it so that way our enemies can also attack it as well, taking damage off of us. The next 2 enemies we're facing are a Grease Mephit, as well as a Goblin Warlock. The Goblin Warlock can use things like Eldritch Blast and Ray of Sickness to do some heavy damage to us, and they could also buff themselves with Armor of Agathis to not only give them temporary HP, but if we are stupid enough to use melee against it, which we won't, we will also be taking cold damage. The Grease Mephit, however, is a little bit of a stronger enemy. Not only can it hurl its grease at us, but we have a potential of slipping on the grease and losing our turn entirely. And here is where we are in trouble. A new enemy spawns, a Maragon. Maragons are powerful mid-game enemies that not only have extra attack, meaning they can have multiple attacks per turn, but they also have a lot of HP, and they are immune to burning, so we can't like slowly chip away at their HP with something like an Alchemist Flask. The Goblin Warlock just sort of died while next to my Spiritual Weapon, so that was pretty easy. And here is what's so annoying about facing against a mid-game enemy. with just myself with Spiritual Flame, as well as the Spiritual Weapon's attack. The Spiritual Weapon has 50% to hit its target, for a pretty decent amount of damage. Out of all the attacks that collided, only a handful managed to land. Not only did he keep succeeding against my Sacred Flame, but my Spiritual Weapon did absolutely nothing, or close to nothing. Meanwhile, the Maragon was doing at least 7 to 10 damage per attack to me. While we did have the Vreen and the Blade Ward up, it was just not enough to handle it out. I was slowly running out of healing options. So I decided to run away from the enemy to see what I have. As it turned out, I have an acid flask in my bag that I could toss at him. Now, this was risky. If I tossed it at him, it would have meant I won the round. If not, well, there would be much more running around. Luckily, it was just the first option, and I did manage to defeat him on that attempt. I took a long rest soon after, regaining our spells and everything, but as it turned out, we really don't have much to work with outside of the plan that we have. Let's hope that the next round is better. The next round consisted of a Goblin Sharp Eye, a Goblin Tracker, and a Ghoul. Ghouls are especially dangerous, for if they hit us, it means that they will paralyze us, which means not only will we be able to take any actions, but any melee attack against us is an automatic critical hit, which means double the damage to us, and that's not good. My Spiritual Weapon managed to get a lucky critical hit on the Goblin Tracker. But another issue happened when the Goblin Sharp Eye decided to summon his War Companion with him. This is going to be a little difficult. Now we just got one extra enemy to deal with. Battle was looking grim, so I didn't want to risk it, so I decided to return to camp instead. I decided to go with my gut and tried to go for the next round, which summoned a Shadow, another Goblin Tracker, and a Nightblade. We've got two big issues here, one being the Nightblade. The Nightblade has a special aura that makes it so that way we'll have vulnerability to piercing attacks. However, because of our permanent Blade Ward, that aura is null and void. The other big issue though is the Shadow. Shadows become invisible while in dark areas, and not only that, they can also drain our strength, doing massive necrotic damage to us. I tried using a Haste Spore grenade to be able to give us an extra action, however that also backfired when the Shadow got an extra action as well. Whoops. I retreated from that battle again, and I don't know how much longer Atoli can take this. We don't really have any other way to heal. We have just our spell slots that we have, and god, this is going to take a long time. The next round consisted of a Bugbear, a Goblin Tracker, a Goblin Sharp Eye, a Hyena, and one of the more terrifying enemies this low level, an Intellect Detonator. If it gets close to you, it will explode, doing heavy acid damage, probably around like 25 to 35 acid damage, which would kill us on the spot. After running away, I sent my Spiritual Weapon to attack the Bugbear, and this sort of works out for our favor because the Intellect Detonator decided to blow up next to the Bugbear. After my first Spiritual Weapon got destroyed, I decided to summon another Spiritual Weapon. That Spiritual Weapon managed to take out the Hyena. I also forgot to mention that I ended up casting Sanctuary on myself. Sanctuary proved to be a very effective spell. It means that enemies cannot attack me unless they do AoE abilities and such. So, I ended up taking out the Goblin Tracker that was there. The Goblin Booyog, the Warlock Goblin thing. Have I been calling it a Tracker this whole time? Sorta kinda. I accidentally mistaken the Sharp Eye for the Booyog. Despite our odds though, we did take out the Goblin Tracker with a lucky Sacred Flame, and we won that round. We hit level 4, and instead of taking a feat, we decided to raise our Wisdom from 17 to 19. This will make it so that way not only do we have another spell to work with, but also makes it harder for our enemies to pass our saving throws. The start of the next round has us fighting against another Shadow and a Shadow Creeper. Shadow Creepers are low HP enemies, but they can do very heavy damage with their barbed vines. I was running low on health, so I decided to gate out of that area. This is starting to get really challenging here. I don't know how much longer she will be able to handle these rounds, but I am surprised that she managed to survive as long as she did. The next round consisted of a Bug Method, a Goblin Warrior, a Shadow Creeper, and another Badger. Now, luckily for us, we have the Blade Ward up, so most of their physical attacks are not going to do much of anything, but we have very low AC. Our bark skin ran out a couple long rests ago, so we just have about 9 to 10 AC, which means more often than not, we were going to get hit with attacks. The spiritual weapon ended up taking out the Shadow Creeper very easily. It also took out the Mud Mephit, however, it exploded, causing a lot of force damage around to everyone. That blast also took out the Badger, which is a plus. The Goblin Warrior soon fell after that, and it was a pretty easy round. We did have a little bit of a trouble, but it wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. After the battle, one of our rewards was a cowboy hat, which we automatically dyed of white to best fit Atoli's hat in GU. It's the closest thing we got, and it looks nice. The next round consisted of several enemies here. A Shadow Creeper, a Kobold, a Goblin Tracker, Goblin Blue Yogg, a Imp, a Goblin Warrior, as well as a Necromancer. The frightening thing about this battle is the many magic users that can cast Ray of Sickness. If even one of those hit, they will do massive damage to us, and also have a chance to poison us, which is never good. In order to buy myself some time and to regain a little bit of HP, I cast Sanctuary on myself. As I said before, this will make it so that way no enemy can target me with attacks, so for the most part, they'll be wasting their turns, and while I will be wasting mine a little bit, it will at least allow me to regain HP until I can think of a plan. Luckily, Sanctuary does not get broken if your spiritual weapon does the damage, and it did take out the Imp just as easy. The spiritual weapon also managed to take out the Creeper that was there as well. Unfortunately, it was defeated by the enemy, and I had really no other options as I couldn't summon another one in its place. With no other option left, I pushed the Kobold into the lava for an easy defeat. Sadly, that idea didn't last very long, as some of the other enemies that were around me could not be pushed into the lava very easily. With no other option left, yet again, I retreated. This next round was especially brutal. A Fallen Ranger, a Goblin Tracker, 2 Face Spiders, and 2 Kobolds for this round. Not only did the Kobolds throw stuff in my direction to try to damage me, but the Ranger has extra attack, which, again, like I stated many times in this video, extra attack, which means more damage to us, especially it, having the damage output that it did. Sacred Flame took out one of the Face Spiders, and surprisingly, the Kobold Looter managed to defeat the other Face Spider that was there trying to get to me. Thanks, buddy. To sum up this final round, I ran away for the most part. The issue was I could not get the damage needed to face off against these enemies. I spent a good amount of time running away, hitting Sacred Flames over and over and over, but eventually, the goblins got to Atoli, and her adventure ended there. Atoli, the level 4 cleric, could not survive the trials of Tav. Now that the run is over, we're going to judge her on a scale from 1 to 5 and see how well she did in this trial. What level was she when her journey ended? She was level 4, and she did surprisingly well in these battles. Though she did not have the offensive capability, she did manage to survive a lot of attacks by having both the Ring of Regeneration and the gauntlets that gave her Blade Ward. How many enemies did she defeat? She managed to defeat 21 enemies. While for the most part she did so on her own, she did also have to rely on enemies throwing things at her or detonating themselves in order to do massive damage around them. So, all in all, I'm still going to count those. How well did she fare against the ever-changing foes in the Trials of Tav? She did manage to survive a good while using her equipment, however, the numbers were against her. There were just too many enemies doing too much damage to her, and she wasn't doing any damage back. So overall, I give Atoli a rating of 3.5 chims. Thank you all for watching. If you enjoyed the video, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and hit the like button as well if you want to see more of this. And also, leave a comment down below to tell me who you want to see next in the Trials of Tav. Which Dot Hack character do you want to see in Baldur's Gate 3? Stay classy, stay beautiful, but most importantly, have a good night.